Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Sweden History, Geography, Economy and Culture. So there's seems to be like a pretty, what you should know about Sweden type of video, because it encompasses like history, geography, economy, like basically everything about this country. I'm excited. I don't really know much about Sweden, except for like a few little things. Meatballs, IKEA, they're into Sweden and they barely see the sun. And they're very, very polite. And that's, I think, about it. So let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe. This is very beautiful. Is it up north? Oh, wow. Is that a lake? It's not an ocean, right? No. Is this a bridge that connects like two countries? Does this connect them with like Denmark or something? Norway? Now I'm guessing it's Stockholm. But a strange looking building. Is that like a rooftop area or something?
It lies in the heart of Scandinavia, a land of forests and lakes, farms and industry, and cities steeped in history. Where once warriors and raiders exported their terror, now only peace radiates from here. A land of liberty, innovation and art, it influences the world like no other small population country does. And what is this country? It could only be Sweden.
Like the little rainbow. Like what a perfect image.
Sweden is a country that is the home of the North Germanic people of the same name, the Swedes, and occupies the central part of Scandinavia in Northern Europe.
It's true, they're like right in the middle.
Germanic tribes have been living in Scandinavia as far back as written sources go, with the first mention of the Swedes as the Suiones by the Roman historian Tacitus in 98 AD.
Okay, really old.
The word for this country used by most languages in some variant or other, Sweden, is thought to come from the Proto-Norse Suiones, meaning one's own, referring to one's own Germanic tribe.
Oh, okay.
But the Swedes themselves call their own country.
It's when you get like one's own, that could apply to like basically any tribe and any people in the world.
Sverige, a name first recorded as Sverige in the earliest of all English written
Sounds like licorice.
works, Beowulf. It literally means realm of the Swedes.
Well, okay.
The most famous part of their history took place between the 8th and 11th centuries, the Viking Age, denoted by a fierce warrior culture that expanded across Europe through the development of the most advanced ships of that time. Whereas the Norwegian and Danish Vikings expanded west to terrorize Britain and France, the Swedes went east across the Baltic and along the main rivers of what is now Poland, European Russia and Ukraine to the Black Sea, where they traded with the Byzantines. The Swedish.
Seeing like the map, it's like crazy to me to think that they came across as like such a long distance, and given the time period, it's like what a feat.
Vikings were known as the Rus, and those that settled in the east founded dynasties, one of which was believed to have been the Kievan Rus, and the word Russia comes from this line.
Oh.
As to when Sweden finally became a united state, that is unclear from the records, but it is believed to be at the latest in the 10th century. The nation abandoned the Old Norse gods in 1050, becoming officially Christian in...
The Old Norse, is that like where, I'm guessing that's the Vikings like religion, right?
In that year. But the old gods still live on in our English days of the week, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday being named after Odin, Thor and Frigga.
Oh my god, it's literally like Thor's day, Thursday, Wednesday. I'm guessing Odin is like when? I don't know how Odin's in Sweden. Like that's crazy. And Friday, Frigga's? Oh my god.
In the early 14th century, the Swedish and Norwegian crowns were united and then joined to Denmark's at the end of that century in what became known as the Kalmar Union, For another century or so after that, all of Scandinavia was under one monarch.
So, like, I
But
love
Sweden
that.
rebelled in 1523 under Gustav I, who also resisted the influence of the Germanic states through the Hanseatic League.
That's crazy because weren't they, like, they came from like Germanic people and they were all Germanic tribes. So isn't that to say, obviously like each own tribe is its own thing, but it's like crazy. Like you're fighting your own people. You guys are from the same, like, you have the same history.
That hitherto had dominated the Baltic. In so asserting Swedish political and economic independence, Gustav is regarded as the founder of the modern Swedish nation.
Makes sense. Great beer.
With its new independence, Sweden then began to assert itself as the master of Scandinavia and the Baltic, adding many lands to its empire and reaching a zenith in the middle of the 17th century, third only to Russia
1600s.
and Spain in power in Europe at that time. But such military expansion came at a huge cost economically,
That's
and over
usually
the
the
next
case.
century and a half, with other powers conniving to rein in the upstart nation, Sweden lost much territory, holding only to that core which forms their borders today. Perhaps so tired of 2 centuries of almost constant war, Sweden then changed policy and became neutral in every European conflict since the Napoleonic Wars. 1814 was the last time Sweden was at war,
That's
a record
incredible. Like,
unbeaten
that's
in
wild.
Europe, longer even than that of legendary neutral Switzerland. Although many would argue that Swedish neutrality in both world wars was questionable, with help to Germany being provided each time, no doubt under the threat of invasion otherwise.
Oh.
Post-war Sweden
Okay, so they weren't as neutral as we were led to believe, and they were helping the Germans, which questionable.
has remained mostly neutral, refusing to join NATO, and only joining the European Union in 1995 after a close referendum. It did not join the euro and has so retained the krona as its own currency. That is not to say it is not active on the international scene.
Yeah, of
Indeed,
course.
Sweden has often acted as a peace broker in various international conflicts.
Yeah, because that's why they're neutral. So it's like you're serving as a referee because you don't have sides.
Leveraging its renowned status as a neutral power. Today, Sweden is a constitutional monarchy with the head of state being Carl Gustaf XVI, occupying only a ceremonial role with no political power.
Are there monarchs these days that hold any political power? Because I think probably like around 90% of countries that have monarchies, like it's just like ceremonial, but not actually like, they're not actually ruling the country.
Real legislative power is in the single national 349-member parliament, the Riksdag, elected every 4 years through a system of proportional representation.
Makes sense.
While Sweden has no federal structure like the USA, Canada or Germany, local counties and municipalities are provided with considerable autonomy from the central government by Sweden's constitution,
Okay, they have
and in fact make
municipalities.
up the majority of the public sector. For 100 years,
But do they have like states or what it's known as a state? That was confusing to me.
the centre-left Social Democratic Party has been the most dominant
Okay,
voice in
for 100
Swedish party
years.
politics, and this is no surprise as Sweden's extensive and widely known welfare state developed under this dominance. Coalitions are the norm, however, in a country that has between 5 and 8 active parties vying for control, with none getting an overall majority since the 1960s. If you don't count
I think that's like, oh no, bad. But it's like, no, I would argue that's good because like it forces you to make compromises so everyone's like happier in general. So I don't think that's a bad thing.
Russia, Sweden is the tallest country in Europe, spanning almost 14 degrees of latitude, from 55 to 69 degrees north, and as a result experiences 4 distinct climate zones. If you travelled the 2,000 kilometers by road from the southernmost to northernmost tips, it would take you over 20 hours.
That's
By
crazy.
comparison, the maximum east-west distance is only 600 kilometers
That's
and would
tiny.
take you just under 6.5 hours to travel. Sweden's total land area is just under 500,000 square kilometers.
That tells me like if Sweden were a house, like it would be like a townhouse because it's like it's very narrow, but it's not that wide, but it's just like very narrow.
Which ranks it 55th largest in the world. The highest and lowest points are 2,097 meters above and minus 2.4 meters below sea level. Most of its coastline is within the Baltic Sea, with the part facing Finland known as the Gulf of Bothnia. A comparatively small stretch faces west into the portions of the North Sea around Denmark known as Skagerrak and Kattegat. In terms of land borders, Norway's dominates, stretching for most of the country's length along its western side. A smaller land border is with Finland in the northeast, while the far southwest faces Denmark along the Øresund Strait.
Yeah, but like, do they have a bridge connecting with Denmark? I think, but I'm not that sure because the others you have like land, you can just cross by car. I'm guessing or by bus.
If we look at Sweden's climate zones and biomes, they roughly follow the lines of latitude, with the far northwest of the country experiencing a mix of alpine and arctic tundra, while subarctic boreal forest, or taiga, dominates the upper two-thirds of the country.
Sounds like they're near the
In these two northern zones, winters are severe, while summers are warm in the taiga but cool in the tundra. Further south, a sizable band
How warm can you actually get though?
of continental climate exists, where winters are less severe and the summers are a little warmer. The natural biome of this band was mixed broadleaf and coniferous forests, but is today largely given over to agriculture.
Oh no!
Unlike the rest of the country, the southernmost part is unshielded from moderating Atlantic westerly winds by the mountains bordering Norway, and so experiences an oceanic climate where winters are mild and summers warm.
Okay.
The natural biome here was temperate broadleaf forest, but like with the continental zone, agriculture dominates here today.
I'm sad about the pines. We're losing the pines, the pine cones, and the pine trees. That makes me sad.
Sweden has a population of over 10 million people today, ranked 89th in the world, with the vast majority of them living in the bottom third of the country.
Of course, because I'm guessing obviously because it's colder up in north, and obviously no one wants to live in those places because it's extremely like the temperature. It's not a walk in the park. So obviously, like people go like to the south.
A third of Swedes live in the three largest cities: the capital Stockholm, the main port and industrial centre of Gothenburg, and the southern city of Malmö, where a rail and road bridge tunnel connects the city with Denmark's capital, Copenhagen.
Okay.
Sweden's own capital, Stockholm, is about a third of the way up the Baltic coast and is notable for lying in an archipelago of thousands of islands. 85% of the population live in urban areas. The vast majority of the population are ethnic Swedes, with ethnic Finns making up the largest minority at just under 500,000. The indigenous reindeer herding Sami people of the north are recognized.
I'm quite shocked by these statistics because it's like Swedes, obviously Finns and Sami, like it makes sense because of like their location. But Middle East is wow, they have a lot of like Middle Eastern immigrants. I'm wondering why.
Minority also.
Well, technically they're not immigrants because they settled there, so obviously like their kids are gonna be Swedish, but ethnicity.
In the last decade, a large number of immigrants from the Middle East were granted asylum and now comprise almost a third of a million. The Swedish language belongs to the...
Okay, take that back. Like, a lot in comparison, but it's like not that many people. Well, sort of. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it.
North Germanic branch of Indo-European languages that includes Norwegian, Danish, Icelandic and Faroese.
What's Faroese?
Swedes, Norwegians and Danes can understand each other's written languages relatively easily, and by and large the spoken languages also.
It's like, okay, ask them if it's that easy to actually understand, because they're similar, but I don't know how, like, I don't know if I understand it completely.
But in the latter case, this may depend upon the dialect spoken, which varies considerably from the south in Scania to the main population areas around Stockholm. And yes, it is true, most Swedes are blondes, and with neighbouring Finland, Sweden has the highest proportion of people with light hair in the world. Considering how successful Sweden is in its economic and global influence.
Do Sami? Samis have blonde hair. I don't think that's the case, but I don't think it's just a stereotype. Yes, there's a lot of people there's a lot of blonde people, but I think there's also a lot of people that are also brown hair and brown eyed, or maybe hazel eyed.
As we'll see shortly, well, I think we should start questioning the accuracy of those jokes about blondes. Sweden's flag is one of the most recognizable in the world, having an offset cross which represents Christianity in common with all Nordic countries, and in the colors of light blue and gold.
I didn't realize.
These colors have been associated with the country since medieval times and
I associate those with IKEA.
also dominate the coat of arms. The three crowns are the symbol most commonly associated with the Swedish state, appearing on government stationery, buildings, and in military insignia.
Okay.
Sweden did not join the euro and so retained its currency of the krona, a word in common with the Danish and Norwegian currencies, which simply means crown. It dates back.
I'm wondering if it's the same, like, is it the conversion rate is the same, like a Swedish krona is worth the same amount as a Danish krona? Is that the case?
To an earlier monetary union with Denmark and Norway that ended in 1914. Sweden's economy is the 16th largest in the world by GDP, and its highly diversified nature is fairly typical of the developed world. It is export-oriented in the same way that Germany, Japan and South Korea
that
are,
makes sense.
with a strong manufacturing sector, but differs in that it also has sizable exports derived from locally sourced primary industries such as mining, fishing and wood. It is home to many world-famous brands with global reach, including IKEA, Volvo, Spotify, H&M, Ericsson, Saab, Scania and Sandvik, and in general its economy is
I think some of them I don't think I've seen Scania. I don't know what that is. Saab, is that a car? But I didn't know that Spotify was Swedish. That's interesting.
dominated by privately owned larger corporations, although in recent decades many innovative startups have arisen here. It ranked as #1 best place in the world for doing business by Forbes magazine in 2017. Like all Scandinavian countries, Sweden has embraced the Nordic model of a large welfare state, which admittedly comes at the price of high taxation.
But it's
The
good.
total amount of taxes paid by an average income worker, whether through income tax, sales tax or otherwise, is about 50%.
Oh my god,
Ranks
okay.
9th highest in the world. In the past, this has been much higher, but with a struggling economy in the 1980s,
Oh my God,
reforms were
even higher.
introduced in 1990 that eased the overall tax burden.
Jesus.
Personal freedom and liberalism are and always have been the hallmark of Swedish culture. Unlike almost all other European nations during the medieval period, Sweden never adopted the feudal system, which otherwise condemned the peasantry to a life only one step above slavery, and so private ownership of land and property by the majority has always existed.
It's interesting, like, how that history, you would think, like, it's in the medieval era, like, hundreds of years ago, but that still permeates some cultures. So it's kind of like, that's interesting.
In the present day, this approach toward liberty is expressed in many ways, from the rise of the Pirate Party, which advocates less restrictive copyright laws,
Okay.
early relaxation
It's like piracy as in, like, actual piracy of things, copyright?
of laws concerning sexually explicit material, to one of only a handful of countries that did not impose a lockdown or quarantine during the coronavirus outbreak of 2020.
But it's because they didn't need it, because they're so private that it's like, I don't really socially, like, I'm not close to people, so it's fine.
In the 2019 edition of the Human Freedom Index by the Cato Institute, Sweden ranked as #1 in the world for personal freedom. Sweden's influence around the world is not just through its well-known corporations. Culturally, Sweden has produced many influences in art, science and music throughout its history. The botanist Carl Linnaeus developed the system of plant and animal species categorization that is
Wow.
used globally today. Alfred Nobel, the chemist who invented modern explosives, saw an early obituary of himself that was critical of him profiting from his discovery being used in warfare, and so feeling guilt, used the proceeds of his fortunes after his death to benefit future generations through the foundation of the Nobel Prize system.
That's so interesting. It's like there was another, like, I think it was Oppenheimer that actually, like, came to regret the whole, like, wow, it created, like, the atomic bomb. And I think it's like, it's good because it's a scientifically, like, advanced. Like, I can see it's sort of like it's 50-50, like, you're proud of what you actually have done from a scientific point of view. It's like, wow, I'm innovating. But of course, like, when it's in the wild, it's like, wow, this is bad, actually.
In more recent times, the Swedish pop group ABBA took the world by storm in the 1970s and are second only to the Beatles in terms of global album sales by a musical group.
Oh,
Sweden's global reach overall is really rather astonishing considering its relatively tiny population
That makes a lot
compared
of
to
sense,
giants
yes.
such as the United States or China. So if we should look to somewhere for inspiration on how to improve our own systems or enrich our own lives, then perhaps the first stop should be that tall country in the heart of Scandinavia.
I think, yes, we can learn a
And
lot.
that's Sweden. I hope you enjoyed this whirlwind tour of that country in this new series about nations around the world. If you did, then please like and share this video.
You're
Let
just
me
a
know
nice
your thoughts
face.
in the comments, especially if you're from this country, and if I missed out anything that you feel is important. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, then please click on the subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.
I think it's interesting what they mentioned of, like, it's such a tiny country, and considering, like, not tiny, because it's not actually tiny, but it's just like it has a smaller population compared to, like, they mentioned, to the US and China. So it's kind of insane what they have achieved and the whole, like, cultural influence they've had, like, throughout the years. and both in companies and also people, like culture as in like music and science and stuff, but also I think in bigger companies as well. So it is a little bit like, wow, you are able to do this with like how many people, like you're from a very like a smaller population that other bigger countries have. But I'm wondering if that's also, again, I think it's a combination of like several factors. But especially like comparing this instance with like the countries that have more people, I think actually if that's actually an advantage, because if you have like fewer people, again, that's just a theory that is I'm just coming up with. I think it actually makes sense that it's like when people say, like, for instance, as an example, when people have like a lot of kids and they have like, I don't know, 8 kids, and you're telling them like, wow, that's how actually how many attention can you actually put into one of them, because you have like 8 kids. So it's like, it's not really like I'm not paying that much attention to all of them equally because there's like a lot of people. But if you have like just one child, one kid, it's like, oh, all my effort, well, not effort, but maybe like attention is put into this like one person. Because I think, you're not being stretched that thin. So I think I'm wondering maybe if that's the case, because it's like if you're people, maybe amounts to the fact that we could put like more attention, like comparing and likening this to an actual country to a bigger scale, and not just parents but the government. It's like if you have fewer people, I think it's more manageable. We can control what maybe not control them in the sense of like, oh, it's an authoritative state of like we're controlling you, but just like we have more control over what's happening. And also I think we maybe can a lot of, I hate to say it, but maybe invest more money into them and invest more money into like a properly, like a society that functions properly as well, because it costs fewer money. It costs less money at the end of the day. So I'm wondering if that's the case. And bigger countries like China and the US, and again, it's not that they're not culturally relevant or they haven't managed to actually influence or create great things, because obviously like they have, and they're constantly doing this, and they're constantly also creating and breaking boundaries and stuff. And people from those countries are still like, again, they're in this day and age are creating great things. And they're standing out in different sort of like, different, like in sports and science and stuff, and different other areas. But I'm wondering if maybe that's a little bit of that. It's like we can't actually put that many effort into maybe education, or at least not equally. And maybe there's just like one part of the population that actually can take advantage of this. Sadly, I think maybe that's the case. I don't really know enough about like countries like China and the political system to actually, how the government actually treats its citizens in that area in particular. But I'm wondering if that's the case. Maybe like if you have more people, or places like, I know bigger places like India or even Brazil, like they have like or Russia, they have like so many people that is like it's hard for the government and for the actual system, not the government as in the person that's actually running the country in this moment. It's just as a system, I think it's probably a little bit harder to actually like manage this. Although maybe not that much, because I think places like China, I know that they're very like, they really do control their citizens. So maybe that's really not the case. So, but maybe I don't know. Maybe I was just like thinking of a little bit out loud and just wondering why that's the case with Sweden. And I put that theory out there. But I'm just, maybe if I'm thinking it truly, maybe not always, maybe not. That's not usually the case. But I was wondering about that. But I think it's like, again, it's kind of credible, like the companies. Actually, I was a little surprised that it was like it was rated as like the better country to like make business, because it's like, wow, you would think like, why is that? I always wonder like how they rate like different things when publications come up with like the number one. It's like, okay, under what sort of criteria you used in order to like make this statement. Because is it like, because like you can come from outside, it's just, and actually like make business there, or it's just like in the same, or is it has to be with like, no, I have to be in business with a Swedish company because that's it's gonna be good for my business as well. But it's like, but why? Like, why is it? Like, is it like Swedish people in general? Can I make a business deal with a Swedish company, but can I make that in Denmark? Or is this gonna be like Swedish because maybe they have like a particular set of laws that actually benefit I don't know, the company, they benefit you. I don't know, like I would love to know, because it's very like how come? Like why? And also the same thing about the personal freedom like index or something. It's like, okay, how are you actually rating this? What kind of things are you taking into account? I'm guessing it obviously have to do with like censorship. That's one of those things, but maybe like freedom as in like, or you have more money, or you earn, no, maybe not more money. You earn enough money to actually, I don't know, buy a house or maybe like pay rent. Is that freedom? I would argue that's freedom. Again, it's like freedom is such a loaded word. It can mean so many different things. So it's like, what do you mean personal freedom? Because also it's not collective, it's personal. So wow, like there's so many things. So I would love to know what kind of criteria they used for this study yet, or for this, I don't know. Yeah, let's call it study. For that study, in actually to make that assumption, or well, not assumption, because apparently obviously they did a study, but I'm wondering like what kind of things, like on what metrics they were measuring this. I think it's interesting that at the end of the day, like obviously it's a richer country. I understand the whole like welfare system, the government, it's high taxation system, which is crazy. I know that it was high, but like up to 50%. That's not for the faint of heart to actually like, wow, I'm kind of losing. You can see it as I'm losing 50% of my salary. But I think it's like it's you don't have to see it as sort of like losing it, because at the end of the day you're reaping the benefits. So maybe you can look at it as I'm investing half my salary into this. And I think maybe long term, like it's maybe cheaper. I get it. It's like, it's a pretty big impact to like someone telling you like you have to pay 50% taxes. It's like, whoa, that's so much. But it's like, yeah, but let's think about it, I think, properly. Because if you don't have to pay for healthcare, for instance, you don't have to pay for education. Like there are certain things that I think at the end of the day, if you kind of like tally things up, maybe it's like it's cheaper, or maybe not cheaper, but it's the same as if I were paying it out of pocket. So, again, I think a more appropriate way to see this as I'm investing half my salary into like, I don't know, public transport and everything working properly. But I think if you see it as a tax, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack. How do you mean 50% of my salary? But it's like, no, it's an investment, which I think would be a little, it's proper, right? Yes, of course, you're seeing the benefits. So it's like, it's okay. But, it's a little bit like, well, it's a little bit shocking. But again, it's like they have a lot of money, but I think at the end, like they do like a lot of, I think it was like mining, and I think fish, like the fishing industry. And I think also like wood, because they obviously have a lot of trees, they have a lot of woods, but they have a lot of wood because they have a lot of trees. But also I think the companies in general, like bigger companies like Volvo or IKEA or Spotify or H&M, which are like huge companies. And it's like, yes, of course they have money because of this, but at the same time, I'm like, is that enough? Like, it's that all? Like, what's the bigger industry in Sweden? I would love to know, because I don't think that's super clear to me, because I'm always wondering about like the natural resources, like those are going to be depleted. So that always makes me nervous when a country like relies too much on those. It's like, oh my God, like it's gonna like, what's going to happen when you cut down all the trees? And also, again, the environment, you shouldn't cut that many trees in this day and age. So it's a little bit, it's making me nervous. Obviously they have a plan, obviously it's been working for them, but I actually want to know, like, in what's the biggest like export in Sweden? Like, how do they actually earn the most amount of money? Would love to know, actually. But this was a very interesting video, and I feel like, yes, I learned a lot. I think there was like a lot of interesting facts about Sweden here. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.